Just when you thought there would be less Justin Fields discussion on the Football Lounge, the football gods say, not so fast. Not so fast. It's almost like they did this on purpose. They're like that Football Lounge show. Those guys.
Yeah. This offseason really has been tailored to our show specifically.
Who spent 3 years talking about Justin Fields, the 3 years of our show that's been going on. And just when you think, all right, they can't talk any more about Justin Fields. Oh, whoa, boy. Did the football gods say, not so fast, Football Lounge? You got more Justin Fields topics coming your way in 2024.
In general, with since we started this show, there's been a lot of Bears-Steelers overlap. From,
I know.
The James Daniels acquisition to the, getting Mitch Trubisky on the Steelers. Like, we've had Chase Claypool trade. Like, we
might be the most topical football show in the world. And who would have guessed it 3 years ago? And you said,
yeah,
well, we got a Steelers fan and a Bears fan. Oh, we'll cover AFC, NFC. That'll be good. We'll have balance. It's like, no, it's been 3 years of nothing but our teams interacting with each other. Exactly. And that will now play out big time this upcoming season. So we are your home. We are your home for Justin Fields takes. Don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere, folks. We will have your Justin Fields takes.
Plenty of Justin Fields takes to come, and plenty to talk about the Steelers and the Bears in this upcoming episode, but that's just going to touch a little bit on the entirety of what we're going to be discussing here today. Last week, of course, we had a little bit of a taste as free agency period, the tampering began, and so we had some news to break during our shows. We also had an awesome interview with Chris Chula, former NFL scout, so if you haven't checked those videos out, please go do so. We talked about Russell Wilson and Kirk Cousins and a couple of the running back signings as well. But obviously, so much more has come out over the week that has transpired of free agency. So this is going to be our, free agency recap. We'll have more moves, of course, coming up here in the next several days as well. But it's kind of simmering now and slowed up a little bit. So we've got a lot to cover, a lot to look back on the week that was free agency frenzy. All right. Of course, it's free agency frenzy, but also including plenty of trades as well. It's just really all of the frenzy that happens during free agency period, which has included a lot of trades between teams as well. And we'll start with the elephant in the room. Justin Fields, you are a Pittsburgh Steeler. Kenny Pickett as well traded to the Philadelphia Eagles. So talk about a couple of moves that I never saw coming. I never thought Pittsburgh was going to be making these types of moves this early on in a quarterback's tenure. And, at this point in the state of the franchise, but Omar Khan, baby, there's a new GM in town, and he is slowly changing the way that Steelers do business. And I'm liking what I'm seeing, Mark. I'm liking it. These are low risk, high reward moves. And for your Bears too, in terms of Justin Fields, you get clarity, you move forward with a renewed focus and just begin a new chapter. So I think for both teams, they're starting fresh with a different set.
Absolutely. I want to get your take on it. When the news broke on Saturday, I was surprised. I had said on my show Saturday morning, actually, that my gut was telling me at this point in time, the fact that he hadn't been traded, that this is going to be a longer drawn out process. He might not get traded till the draft, if at all. Maybe this is that long play, because it just felt like if they were going to make the move, they would make the move quickly. We're now learning that if you trust the sources, and I do, Ryan Poles really, truly did want to do right by Justin and find a place that he'd be willing to go. And the looks of it is that Atlanta was probably Justin's number one destination. But when Ryan comes back to him and says, listen, I hate to break it to you, but Atlanta's not interested. They don't want to dance. They want to go Kirk Cousins. That probably slowed down the process of them being like, okay, so Justin, where else would you even want to go? Like, where would you want to go compete? And I have a good reason why Pittsburgh was at the top of his list. So my instant reaction was, okay, crap, like this is happening. It's gone down. And my focus immediately shifts to Caleb Williams, and the Bears need to draft Caleb Williams as opposed to the Drake Mays, the Jay Daniels. I'll explain that later on. We'll get into that. But what was your gut reaction when you saw the move?
I loved it. I thought it was awesome. I was in LA for a wedding this past weekend, and we were actually just hanging out, having a couple margaritas before the wedding. And I got that ping on my phone. I was like, holy smokes, I'm glad it came out now and not during the wedding when I wouldn't be looking at my phone and stuff. So that I was fascinated. Like I said, I didn't think that they would make a move like that, and I was more surprised at the return. But it did make more sense once we kind of saw how the market had evolved and played out over this offseason so far, and cooled a little bit on Justin Fields. I think it was a good combination of the Bears trying to do right by Justin and also getting the return that they probably were going to get regardless, it seems. I don't buy into the fact that, like, if someone was offering a 2 and Pittsburgh offered what they ended up getting him for, I don't think that Ryan Poles would have just said, oh, to be nice to Justin, we'll send him to Pittsburgh. They would have taken the 2. They would have taken a bigger return. But if it was a matter of like a 1-round difference, I could see the Bears saying, you know what, we got to do right by Justin here. We'll take a slight hit on the return if it means putting him in a good position and us kind of getting the deal done and out of the way. So I think it's a good fit for Justin. He's mirrored himself, he has said, to Russell Wilson. And with Russell Wilson being there, I think it's clear, Justin Fields will have a veteran mentor in the room that he's never really had. I mean, we can, talk about what the Andy Dalton for the first year, right? He was there, and that's all well and good, but we're talking about a, potential Hall of Fame Super Bowl winning quarterback who has a very similar play style. So I think Justin could probably glean a lot from Russell Wilson. And my second instant reaction was that I don't think that this is just a plug in Russell and we're off and running and that's how it's going to be. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to give Justin, an opportunity to surprise them in camp and, make a case for himself to be the starter. Yeah. The only thing is I think Russell he will start with the first team snaps because he's the veteran and he signed with the knowledge that, you're going to start to get the first team snaps, but I mean, they don't owe him anything. And if Justin is performing better and working better in the system, I don't think they'll hesitate to make him the starter, to be honest.
Yeah. If I was Russell Wilson, I would have been bummed by this news 100% because you can obviously beat out Kenny Pickett. And I think for me, it became less shocking that the Steelers made a move like this after they traded Kenny Pickett. That was a shocker. The trade of Kenny Pickett,
Pickett, that was the biggest
because
one.
That's so anti what Pittsburgh's all about, right? Pittsburgh is all about that continuity, blah blah blah, like
homegrown.
And for them to make that move, that showed me that hey, we're gonna have to start playing chess when everyone else is playing chess. It felt like the Steelers were playing a little bit of checkers when everyone else was playing chess the last couple of years. Now they're like, all right, no, we get that we've got to play this game. We've got to be aggressive. We got to figure this out. Look at the quarterbacks in our division. Look at the quarterbacks in the conference. We've got to become more aggressive. I agree that Russell Wilson will get the first team snaps. I'm fully okay and comfortable going on the record now of saying I believe that Justin Fields will start more games for Pittsburgh in 2024, 2025 than Russell Wilson. Okay. Russell Wilson will throw a better ball than Justin Fields. But Russell Wilson is one of the now most notorious in our lifetimes, least liked locker room guys of all time. I mean, nowhere that he has gone are people like in love with Russell Wilson.
Raving about him.
One thing we know about Mike Tomlin, even though he is judge, jury, and executioner and runs a very solid program, we know his locker rooms can be a little wild. Like that's just how Mike Tomlin is. Well, whether
he lets guys be themselves.
Yes. Yep. And if that's the truth of it, Justin Fields is going to win over that locker room quickly. Because Justin Fields, what we know of him so far in his short career, one of the most dudes in the NFL. The guys just love him. They love him so much. He was voted after that, even earning the number 1 pick last year and having the worst record. He was in the NFL top 100 because of what he did and how guys like him and respect him and talk about him. So that's going to be his thing for Russell Wilson to really have to overcome. And if he struggles at all, there's going to be a locker room coup, I think, for Justin Fields. It'll be interesting to see how Pittsburgh handles that. It's going to be a fascinating thing. We don't need to spend much time on that now because it's going to be talked about ad nauseum throughout the season.
Yeah.
From the Bears,
and let's finally, just to put a bow on it before you get to the Bears about that. And there had been talks about Justin Fields potentially going to Atlanta before Arthur Smith was even fired. We were talking about how that system could work really well for Justin Fields. So now with Arthur Smith being the OC in Pittsburgh, and having Russell Wilson and Justin Fields there, it seems to be a little bit better of a fit for Justin than it does Russell as well, because Russell's, not quite as mobile as he used to be. And this, this system banks a lot on play action and moving. So yeah, that was just something that stuck out to me as well, that this fit has been talked about before Arthur Smith was even here in Pittsburgh.
Really great point. And I think the final button on the Pittsburgh aspect of it is that they're paying Justin more than they are.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And they will have to make a decision on Justin's fifth-year option before he takes a snap for them in a meaningful game. So that is when people talk about. So now that's part of why I want to transition now towards the Bears perspective. One of the things I know, our guy Tyler Dawson and some other people, I've already been getting people around the office saying, did they get enough for him? Justin was in a weird predicament with his contract, right? You can look at it two ways. If he had played slightly better or had stayed completely healthy, it's easier to say, pick up 2 years of control with a fifth-year option. That's nothing for a quarterback that we want, you know what I mean, to build our franchise around. The problem is that the Bears and the rest of the league truly see Justin Fields as what he is, huge upside. But the problem is right now, it's still such a big question mark if he's going to be capable of getting that next contract. And in order to make the value out of Justin Fields for the Bears and for any other franchise, the truth is you got to pick up the fifth-year option. You want the control of him. But then all of a sudden you are investing $12 million this year and $25 million the following year. And that's a pretty big investment for just a 2-year rental, if it becomes that, or if he doesn't start and win your starting job. So when you talk about getting a ton back for him, and yes, could the Bears get more back for Justin week 4 if someone goes down with an injury? Sure, they may have been able to sneak out a third rounder or a second rounder, depending if the team was really desperate and which organization it was. But when you think about my gut telling me, and I think Ryan Poles' gut telling him too, we think that Justin's probably going to start more games than Russ. Well, then that becomes a 4th-round pick next year. So would you hold on to Justin and go through all the pains of training camp and putting Caleb in a really bad position just to make a 4th-rounder go to a 2nd or a 3rd? It's not worth it. The Bears, the other thing that, again, we talked about it so much on the show already this offseason. I said it when we did our Justin Fields episode a couple weeks ago. The most important thing that the Chicago Bears can do is make sure that they don't screw up. If you do draft Caleb Williams, that you don't screw it up. And by keeping Justin Fields in the locker room, you've already screwed it up. Right?
Yeah, that's a bad situation.
And that the Bears would not be in this situation if the Bears would not be drafting a quarterback if they didn't have the number 1 overall pick. Even if that Panthers pick was 3, 5, 7, maybe they had 7 and 9, 8 and 9, whatever it was, the Bears would not be, maybe someone would be saying, trade up, go get a quarterback. But overall, that would be looked as a fringe thing. And you'd be like, no, ride with Justin another 2 years and draft some more good players. Go get Keenan Allen, fine. Kevin Byard, fine. But still draft and build around him. It's not that Justin is incapable of playing in the league and so why did the Bears get so little for him? It's just that he's really valuable to the Bears if they didn't have the number 1 pick and because of the cost control. And it's really tough for other teams with Justin's injury history and Justin's inconsistencies to be willing to give, $37 million over 2 years to a guy that maybe end up being their backup quarterback, because The quarterback, whenever they go to their second team, they're never as valuable as they were to the first team. That's just the truth of the matter. And so, talking on the larger scale, my little, I will say this is my eulogy to Justin Fields' time as a Chicago Bear. I think there's many people who've said it right already, so I'm not trying to claim this as my own, but I've always felt this way, and I think I will echo a lot of sentiment for some big Chicago Bears media or fans. Guys like I know Barstool Big Cat has said things along this line, and some other guys like Hoge for Chicago, and some of those guys who do great work. And I know guys like Tom Waddle have felt this way, and ESPN 1000, the guys I listen to and trust. It is absolutely 100% fair to say Justin Fields got the raw end of the deal his time in Chicago. He was drafted by a lame duck, coach and GM that were trying to save their jobs, and they were so bad they couldn't even use him right in the first year to save their jobs. We said it on this show. If Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace could develop the plan to draft Justin Fields and then showcase to the league we know how to use this guy, they would have gotten more years in Chicago. But they were so bad and inept that they couldn't even do that. Remember Justin's first start against Cleveland after Andy got injured? He was sacked 9 times in that game. They were so inept at using him, and it was so bad early that they threw him to the Wolves, and it was so obvious that this kid's got talent, but we need a new organization. The organization then really didn't owe anything to Justin Fields, and they made what they thought was the right decision. Clearly, it's turning out of hiring of Poles was a good decision. Matt Nagy, I think, was still kind of 50-50 coin. Matt Eberflus 50-50 coin toss if that will work. But it's not Ryan Poles' job. He doesn't owe it to Justin Fields to bring him an offensive coach. They brought in a staff that they had a high confidence in. Luke Getsy, clearly they lost confidence in. And in the end, Ryan Poles did the right thing by tearing this thing down to the studs last year and getting the number 1 pick, trading it, and now getting this haul. All Ryan Poles has done is exactly what he should do. He picked a coach he believed in that was also highly recommended to him and is not really his first choice. We believe at this point in time, I don't think there's many people in the national media or the Chicago media that would disagree. Ryan Poles will earn a chance to get a new head coach if Eberflus doesn't shine this year. Ryan Poles, it wasn't necessarily his handpicked guy. They're not tied together. Ryan Poles has showed you he deserves to be the GM of an NFL franchise in the Chicago Bears. He's hit a lot of home runs. Yes, he's got his misses, Velus Jones, Chase Claypool. But those are few and far between, and he's moved off them. The Claypool moved quickly, and he's done so much good to outweigh the bad. And Ryan Poles has now done exactly what he needed to do, what the last organization didn't do. The last organization drafted a quarterback on a whim and a Hail Mary, please save our jobs. This now organization and this team of Ryan Poles-led organization is drafting a quarterback with a complete surrounding cast,
yes,
and stability that will succeed. And I think when Ryan Poles looked at all of the numbers and looked at this gift he was given with the number 1 pick this year, they were willing to pass on Bryce Young and maybe wrongly pass on CJ Stroud because they believed in Justin enough to give him 1 more year. Justin did not do enough with more help, and he did staying healthy to show the organization that it's a no-brainer to stick with him versus taking a quarterback who we believe in, Caleb Williams, to be in the class of the Trevor Lawrence, Andrew Luck of the last, 15 years of can't miss guys. Heisman Trophy winner, started as a freshman over a incumbent with a high ceiling in Spencer Rattler at Oklahoma, and has done nothing but win a Heisman Trophy and play with a horrible defense and carry a USC offense to be one of the best in the nation when they knew they had to score because their defense was so bad, especially last year. He's been really phenomenal. Had some bad games, but they've asked him to literally do everything at USC. The kid is special from the tape I've seen, and now he has a chance to really thrive. So I said it weeks ago. I'll echo the sentiment now. I trust in Ryan Poles, whatever decision he makes. He's made this decision, and I think in doing so, we can now look back and say he did right by Justin. He got something for Justin, not nothing. Which again, you don't in this situation, is it 100% maximized? No, but it's something. It's not nothing. And he's done so much with the Keenan Allens and all the other moves we'll talk about here coming on up that when we look back, if Caleb Williams is a bust and doesn't play, we will not be able to say, well, the Bears didn't do enough for Caleb Williams. The Bears have done enough for insert name here. This current iteration of the Bears. You want to blame the Bears for what they did to Justin Fields? That's on Ryan Pace. That's the previous iteration. Ryan Poles did right by the organization. Maybe not doing 100% right by Justin, but he gave Justin a chance.
Well, it was a spot where you weren't going to be able to do right by Justin at that point.
And he gave him a chance in year 3 as opposed to trading him last year and taking a quarterback number 1. He gave him a chance in year 3, and Justin, while good, wasn't good enough and stayed healthy enough to elevate beyond getting another chance. And also, it's not Justin's fault that the Panthers were so inept and that Ryan Poles fleeced them so badly that the Bears found themselves in a position to do something that very, very few organizations get to do: be a 7-win team with an up and coming roster with really solid pieces and draft number 1 overall without having to give up so much to do it. They didn't have to give up anything to do it. They got things in order to get the opportunity to do it. It's a very unique situation the Chicago Bears find themselves in.
Most organizations that end up picking that high have to hit on a generational talent at the position. We're talking a Joe Burrow to Cincinnati,
to carry
Trevor
the roster,
Lawrence, to Jacksonville. Yeah, Andrew Luck to the Colts, because these are desperate organizations, rarely with the infrastructure in place to help support a young developing quarterback. And so, to your point, the Bears do find themselves in that space right now, which is why it was almost a no-brainer for them going into this offseason to take Caleb Williams if they could trade Justin Fields and kind of start fresh, because they have the ability to bring a young quarterback into a more stable situation with weapons, with a defense, and with a revamped coaching staff. I think Shane Waldron was a big piece to all of this that Ryan Poles deserves credit for. And Justin, he's going into the best situation that he could probably hope for, because he goes to a franchise that is finding itself as a stable spot with a really, really good defense, a really solid run game, something that a player of Justin Fields' capability and style really needs a definitive run game. And that was something that the Bears used to have, but we're kind of losing it in these last several years. And so that was tough for Justin too, because he had to be the run game in many respects. Yeah. Now he can have a lot of support throughout, and you don't have the pressure. I just think it's super cool. Grace actually mentioned that poster behind me. I don't know how well it can be seen here, but that's the poster I got at the Bears Steelers game at Heinz Field in Big Ben's last season, Justin Fields' rookie year. Who would have thought then that Justin Fields was playing in then Heinz Field? Gonna be, that was his first time in that stadium, and now he's gonna be playing at Acrisure Stadium, as his home field. So I just think that's really cool how those worlds kind of collide a little bit. But it's a reset for him, and he has the weapons to do it. They did trade Deontay Johnson, their number 1 receiver, which was an interesting move from the Steelers' perspective. But we can talk more about what they're going to do in the draft and things of that nature when we get to our draft previews. But I agree with a lot of what you said, and Caleb Williams will have a nice grouping to work with as he comes into the NFL.
To put a button on it for me, and then we can move on to all the other great, exciting things to talk about. If I was now Ryan Poles, I do like that he made this trade as early as he did, in the sense now, if I was Ryan Poles, I would come out and say, we're taking Caleb Williams 1 overall. Like, I would just say it. Like, we'll go to the pro day. They're going to do their due diligence. I think the pro day is today for Caleb Williams or tomorrow. And they're there. Eberflus is there. Poles is there. The whole contingency of Bears. If they're sold on him, I think they are. They should be. I think, he's number 1 for a reason. Anyone who's truly saying that, oh no, so-and-so is better than Caleb, a lot of those guys, in my opinion, those are more of the clickbait guys versus the true, hey, I'm just trying to give you an honest opinion. And Caleb's game, yes, 10 years ago would have looked really wonky and people would have had a ton of question marks. But now we know because of Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, these kind of traditional off-platform unique throwers. The NFL's more used to that now. And Caleb is the highest prospect of that generation of now guys. Like, he is the guy that you can honestly say he's the first one coming out that you're like, no, that looks like Mahomes. It's crazy. When you watch the highlights, it really looks like that. So if I were Ryan Poles, I would come out and say, he's our guy. We're taking him number one overall.
Like, what benefit does he get from doing that?
And that's why I'm saying my point in doing that is the locker room loved Justin so much. Start telling the locker room, watch the film on this guy. Fall in love with him. We've fallen in love with him. He's going to be our guy. I don't care. We're not taking you. Washington, you can't offer me $1 million first-round picks from. Like, we're all in on this guy because and that way he'll start to build that credibility with the locker room. Hey, say DJ Moore, call him up. Start talking with him. Go out there and catch some balls with him. This dude is special. We can't wait. We're excited. This is the guy who's going to bring in the new usher of Bears football. Don't let that stuff start creeping in the mind to where guys like DJ Moore have to go on a podcast or whatever and be like, do you even know they're taking? No, I don't know. They haven't told me. I haven't had to speak with them. Let's get that clarity going. Let's build that excitement. Let's start at that buy-in now from the team and the organization with Caleb Williams. Work the deal done. They have the Bears can do it all. They've seen that before. Sam Bradford, I think it was like 3 weeks before the draft. It was already announced, way back when that the Rams are taking him number one, and now they're working on the contract. Like, I'm all in on that methodology now. Enough with the crazy people talking about, we actually like JJ McCarthy, but the Bears. No.
Yeah.
Start that relationship. Hey, Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, go out, Cole Kmet. Go start catching balls from this kid. It's going to be fun. This is going to be special.
Yeah, Caleb Williams is a Bear that is written in pen, I would say, at this point, not pencil for sure. All right, let's move on to some of the other big-time signings that have happened. There's quite a few. Tried to boil it down to like the most impactful moves, and your Chicago Bears are in that list as well. Again, that we'll come to in just a few moments. But one of the big ones we talked about most of the running backs. Derrick Henry, though, signing with Baltimore, a surprising contract, just 2 years, $16 million. I was surprised at that return. But overall, we had talked about it. Most people were not surprised. Derrick Henry, a perfect fit for what the Ravens want to do, be physical in the run game. Imagine trying to game plan for tackling Derrick Henry and then the next play having to try and tackle Lamar Jackson, two completely opposite styles that work great. And the rookie Keaton Mitchell should be back at some point this season for Baltimore, and he has a very much the lightning to Derrick Henry's thunder.
Totally.
It was obvious Baltimore needed to find a run game that they've been searching for years and just couldn't be healthy. Finally, they get Derrick Henry here, the big man. That was a big splash for sure, and I thought it was a great move overall for the team. And the fact that they got him at that price, even more of a win for Baltimore.
Yeah, it's a huge win on all sides. I wasn't surprised by the deal because, if you remember, Henry was one of the few running backs like Christian McCaffrey who actually did get paid. Like, he had a really nice 4-year deal he just finished with the Titans. So I don't think money was necessarily the sticking point for Henry as opposed to, like, I need to go to the right place. And I think we all knew Baltimore was the right place for him. Still a nice deal. And also Baltimore is paying Lamar Jackson a lot of money. So I think it's a little bit of that. I'm sure his agent met with him like, this is the top dollar we can go. We might have gotten more money somewhere else, but this is where we belong. Playoff games, late January with Lamar Jackson. I think this will help Derrick Henry of his very borderline Hall of Fame type of career that he's having. If he can have 2 great years in Baltimore, fits with his style, fits with his personality. I think he knows that as well, as opposed to just disappearing in Arizona because he makes more money. You know what I mean? And I don't know if Arizona's offering. I'm just using a team, for example. So love it. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, great signing there for Baltimore. And they are rounding out a pretty nice club to return in 2024 with another shot at a Super Bowl. We had the Cleveland Browns trading for Jerry Jeudy, an interesting move there with the Broncos. It looks like really Denver is fully set on kind of just restarting, acquiring picks when they can. And that's a smart move because they're going to have to fill a lot of holes in this roster and have young guys come in because they're eating so much dead cap space. And for Cleveland, this is more of like a move where, they traded, I think, like a 5th rounder for Amari Cooper. So they're moving in that realm of trying to trade, day 3 picks for, obviously Amari Cooper is a much better prospect and player than Jerry Jeudy, but it's just kind of in that realm of like filling out their wide receiver room with late picks. And this is, again, we've talked about it, Deshaun Watson is having, being given all of the help that he can possibly want to succeed. And so, if it doesn't work out this year, then they may have to go the route of what Denver did with Russell Wilson and eat a bunch of dead cap to rip the Band-Aid off and move on because, Jerry Jeudy, not the best. We've seen a total up and down career for him so far in Denver. But in Cleveland, being the number 2, a solid route runner, he should have success there. And so should Deshaun Watson. He's got weapons. Not many excuses there for him.
Yeah, Amari is moving past the point where he's a burner and more of like the skilled route runner versus Jerry Jeudy can still be the over-the-top threat. So I like it. To me, the more underrated move that Cleveland made was getting Jameis Winston. A lot of people were like, they got to re-sign Flacco. I knew they weren't going to re-sign Flacco. That would create chaos in their locker room because as soon as Deshaun Watson throws a pick and be like, get Flacco in there. No one's going to call for Jameis Winston, but Jameis Winston is a starting caliber quarterback. And so if Cleveland, with these weapons and that defense, if something happens with Jameis Winston with Deshaun Watson where he gets injured again or the play just is so bad, they have a guy who's just as capable, if not more capable, than having a nice run and putting up good numbers than Flacco with Jameis Winston if it hits the shan. Because I truly believe if Deshaun Watson has a bad year and the Cleveland Browns miss the playoffs with him playing 17 games, they're going to try to move off him. And the best way to do that is if you got a guy in your building already who you like, who you're not paying anything, in Jameis Winston to help with the transition year. And I think that's what Denver's doing. You touched on it a little bit. Denver is purging, and they're doing the right thing. Purge. Get rid of a good safety. Get rid of a good wide receiver. Accumulate as much picks as you can. A lot of people keep saying, Denver's going to draft a quarterback in the first round. Maybe they're going to move up. I think if Denver is smart, they'll take a flyer on a guy in like the 2nd, 3rd round. But overall, I think Denver's goal is to end up with a top 3 pick next year. I think Denver and Sean Payton are going to look at each other and say, listen, we tried to make it work with Russell for 1 year. I gave you that. Now give me my year of tanking. Let's be really bad in a great AFC. And then let's just go pick the number 1 quarterback next year in the draft. And let me scout these guys. I think if Denver, I would be shocked if Denver tries to go all in to move up to get a quarterback or to reach on a quarterback where they're picking in the 1st round. I think Denver's a key candidate for sneakily tanking going into next year.
They could easily do that. But yeah, I will say if they could find the right trade partner, if they feel strongly about a Jaden Daniels or a Drake May, or hell, if they want to move back up into the late 1st round and take a Bo Nix or something like that, I could see that being a potential move for them too, without having to mortgage their entire future for it. And then,
because they need cost control. Like they're eating so much of Russell Wilson's cap. You got to remember, in the room, they're probably saying to themselves, we need to draft as many players as possible because we cannot
they need a lot of picks.
We can't afford anyone. We can't even afford probably our 1st rounder right now. So we need to get younger and cheaper. And so it wouldn't shock me if Denver's one of those really feisty teams that loses a lot of games next year, and Sean Payton owns it and says, listen, we have a plan here to reset in the post-Russ world. The first year about this is going to be painful, but this is what we got to do to go through. He's got 4 more years on that deal. I don't think they're worried about that at all.
Yeah, it could be like year 1 under Dan Campbell with the Lions. Just,
yes.
It's sometimes you got to go through the turmoil to get out on top and have that, ship steadied for several years. Speaking of kind of creating some stability, the New York Jets seem to be, hell bent on making sure Aaron Rodgers does not fall down or get put on the turf at all next season. They traded for offensive tackle Morgan Moses from the Baltimore Ravens, and then signed Tyron Smith, the big left tackle, to a 1-year, $20 million contract. So they are completely trying to rehaul and revamp that offensive line, especially at those tackle positions. They signed a couple guards as well. They are really, doing everything they can to get that offensive line working. And we talked about it. I mean, this is it for the Jets. Like they have a window, and it's very, very small. Something has to happen ASAP. And for Robert Saleh to keep his job, I imagine they need to make the playoffs, and they need to probably host a playoff game next year. If they're looking to kind of retain things and keep this on the trajectory that they're hoping to create.
Yeah, depending on if their quarterback's going to be the vice president of the United States or not, we'll figure out. I will say this: I think I like the moves, and I like already. Then you can move some of those tackles that they whiffed on, the Elijah Vera Tuckers of the world, who played well but can't stay healthy. Like they'll learn a ton from a Tyron Smith, and Tyron Smith probably can't give you 17 games this year. He's gonna tweak something. He's old. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer, and so it creates a ton of now flexibility with that offensive line where they had none of that last year. So solid moves. I still expect them in the second, third round to continue to just draft depth in the offensive line as well as skill position guys, because that defense is still really solid.
Absolutely. Yep. No, they've got a really good defense, and they got Javon Kinlaw from the 49ers as well. They add to that defensive line, so they got better there as well. Houston, I was thinking that they could be a sneaky trade or landing spot for Saquon Barkley or, one of those top running backs. And they got Joe Mixon. He was traded to Houston. Not one of the top line guys, but pretty close, like in that second tier of those on the market this year. So pretty solid signing for Houston. They've been overall fairly quiet this free agency period, but given the success that they had last year, and the picks that they still have and the youth that they have on their team, to have the success that they did winning a playoff game, it's more about just adding on the margins and kind of getting a few things tweaked here and there. Joe Mixon adding to the run game, I think, is going to be one of those sneaky additions that maybe isn't talked about enough, but elevated a relatively weak part of their game on a team that didn't appear to have too many weaknesses last year. So I really like this signing for the Houston Texans.
Well, yeah, and Danielle Hunter, on a 2-year deal.
Yes,
that's really the big, to me, that's the big thing. You add him with Abrams on the other side, and now that defense. Anderson, Anderson, Will Anderson, not John Abrams. Will Anderson. So now all of a sudden now that's a really potent pass rush. And the young Anderson can learn from the veteran Hunter. You only gave him a 2-year deal, so it fits in your kind of window of like, hey, we want to win long-term, but also we kind of surprise ourselves that we can win the division this year, so why not kind of go for it? And again, I didn't know Mixon would be on the market, and what the Bengals ended up doing in replacing him while also getting something for him, it was a solid move on both sides all around.
Yeah, agreed.
Those two moves, Hunter and Mixon, add for the helping Texans win again, while also knowing that these aren't like long-term things that are going to hamstring their bright future over the next 5 years of growth versus like this kind of exponential, hey, can we make it to an AFC championship game next year? They're setting themselves up in a good spot to do that.
They're ahead of schedule, and so they can afford to pay to win now for some positions. While, like you said, not
those toys to play with on defense. Yeah,
exactly. The Buffalo Bills signed their offensive tackle Deion Dawkins to a 3-year, $60.5 million contract. So they are, trying to keep what they can of their offensive line intact on that end. And we saw that they ended up, losing Gabe Davis to the Jacksonville Jaguars. So that was just kind of a part of it where, the Bills trying to retain their own. And I think, Deion Dawkins being probably their best offensive lineman, that was smart because you want to keep this window with Josh Allen as open and available as possible. I do have concerns about Buffalo now with their receiving core starting to fall apart. It did feel that the window was the last 2 to 3 years because they had Stephon Diggs, they had Gabe Davis when he was going off. And now they lost Gabe Davis. There are rumors that Stephon Diggs, might not be back with Buffalo, depending on, what discussions get had or if some trades come through. He's kind of been rumored out there. If that's the case, then Buffalo all of a sudden goes from, having a lot of weapons to few and far between. So I am worried about that aspect, but I like the signing of Dawkins because tackles are hard to find. And if you got a good one, you got to keep them.
Oh, yeah, and that run game started developing for them late in the year last year, and he was a huge part of that. So you want to keep that continuity. But they did sign Curtis Samuel, 3-year deal, the wide receiver.
Yeah, I like that.
And I like that. I like that because Gabe Davis was a big play threat, but he wasn't a possession receiver. And Curtis Samuel is a possession receiver which Josh Allen desperately needs. You remember Josh Allen, that year,
and you could do a lot with him. They didn't have a versatile receiver on that team.
Yeah, exactly.
They had,
Gabe Davis just had to be on the outside and running go routes, and then Stephon. Yeah. So you add in a guy that's going to be able to just be a real helpful third down possession receiver, takes a little pressure off of Stephon Diggs, and you can actually let Diggs run some more of those go routes and be more explosive. So I think if they can keep Diggs happy and keep him there, I like what they've done. I think they should go out and they should really consider a guy who just got released from the Raiders, like a Hunter Renfrow. Like they could use another guy like that, or in the draft finding and maybe
or
just
Mike Williams.
Williams,
he is kind of like a Gabe Davis.
Take a flyer on that, where you already have your 1 and 2 with Samuel and Diggs, but like you add him. Yeah, I was going to say they need either a big body guy or just another really shifty, Cole Beasley type of guy where they were really good, where they had, that type of receiver. So they're not. I like the Curtis Samuel as an answer to losing Gabe Davis. It's not a complete replacement, but I don't think it's an upgrade, but it's like, we're going to change this a little bit, and I think that's a smart move for the Bills.
Speaking of receiver, I wanted to get your thoughts real quick about the NFL. They had the series quarterback or QB, and there were rumors that, they weren't really able to get many people on board to do the season 2. They have now announced
they'll put a camera in my face.
Yeah. So that Netflix announced that they'll be doing receiver, and it's going to feature Deebo Samuel, Devontae Adams, Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, George Kittle. I think this is really smart because while quarterbacks are obviously the biggest celebrities overall in the NFL, receivers are really the biggest celebrities among the younger crowd. A lot of preteens to adolescent kids really are into the Justin Jeffersons and the Jamar Chases and the Deebo Samuels because they're the ones that are a lot more out there on social media and tend to, have those big play moments and are in on the video games and Fortnite and all of that. So, yeah, I think it's a smart move by Netflix.
No, it's good. I'll watch it. I can't wait. And they got good personalities for it. Breaking news, Jerry Jeudy, Ian Rappaport just tweeted out 6 minutes ago, per him and Tom Pelissero, Jerry Jeudy and the Browns have agreed to a 3-year extension worth up to $58 million, including 41 fully guaranteed. So they're paying Jerry. They brought in Jerry Jeudy and they're paying him. So he's going to be wide receiver number 2 at $41 million for the next 3 years.
That's a bit rich for my blood. That's a lot of money to pay a receiver that has had a lot of ups and downs. But he can be really good. I mean, he's a sharp route runner and stuff. So hopefully it works out. That's a lot of guaranteed money for a team that's already got $230 million of that poured into their quarterback. So yeah, surprising, but there you go. They've got their 2 wide receivers locked up there. So, that not many more that they're going to have to go out and get at this point. All right. So let's move on to some of the other big signings. Did we mention the Colts inking Michael Pittman to a 3-year, $70 million deal? I don't remember.
But
I know we talked about him being franchised, but yeah, this was really smart. We were both on this.
You need to save him. He's a wide receiver number 1, and you have a young quarterback. It makes a lot of sense. It's rich, but he's in his prime. And when you have a wide receiver number 1, as often as we talk about, hey, wide receivers are now a dime a dozen, like running backs in the draft, and you could find Puka Nakuas in the 5th round. When you have a true wide receiver number 1 who's capable of 1,200 yards and 10 touchdowns like a Michael Pittman is, you lock them up if they're in their prime. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, would you rather guarantee 46 million to Michael Pittman or 41 million to Jerry Jeudy? I think that's
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
when compared to that, the Colts look like they got a steal. They also re-signed Kenny Moore, their cornerback, so keeping a true, a lockdown presence in their secondary intact as well. Las Vegas with one of the big splashes of the offseason,
Yeah.
Christian Wilkins, a 4-year, $110 million deal. Loved this move for them. Look, we talked about, teams like or divisions like the AFC North, divisions like the AFC West. You need pass rush, and you need it in the middle. You need it on the outside. You need it wherever you can get it, because you are facing Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert. You were facing Russell Wilson, whoever the Broncos have next. So to get Christian Wilkins to be the inside, force there, stopping the run and being able to rush the passer while you have Max Crosby on the outside doing his damage. This was a must-needed move for Vegas, and he seems like a really good fit there with the Raiders and that fan base and that culture
pricey
with Antonio Pierce. It is. It's a lot of money, but Christian Wilkins is, is really solid.
He's a guy we don't mention, talk about a ton about. I mean, Dolphins fans certainly did, but in the national media, he doesn't get the attention of a Watt, of a Myles Garrett and those guys, but he is phenomenal. Yeah. And I will say the strength of the Raiders just got stronger, and you made your best player better too. By now, you can't completely just double and chip only Max Crosby all the time. So that is a smart investment. And you sign a defensive coach. You're gonna lean into that defensive culture. Again, the Raiders, what the heck? They're gonna do a quarterback with Minshew just kind of. But they're kind of going in this. Hey, we're gonna build this brick by brick, and our identity right now is our strong defensive line. And we're going to lean on that going into this season. We'll see what happens with offense, maybe come the draft and things like that.
Another big defensive splash was the New York Giants trading for Brian Burns and then turning around and signing him to a 5-year, $150 million deal, 76 of it guaranteed. I like Brian Burns a ton. I just think the Giants, What is Brian Burns going to do for the Giants to get to the playoffs and win playoff games? Like, the Giants have so many other issues that I worry that Brian Burns is now going to be wasted in New York for the core prime of his career. From a Giants perspective, do you want a Brian Burns on your team? Absolutely, he's amazing, he's great. But I thought Brian Burns, what was best for Brian Burns, would have fared better with the team that is more ready to win, than a team like the New York Giants, I think. But then again, the Giants defense was so bad, they had to stop the bleeding in some way. And I think this helps at least, put them in contention to keep games close, because they know they're not going to blow teams out with Daniel Jones.
Kayvon Thibodeau on the other side. So again, they like the Raiders, they at least say to themselves, hey, we have now a real identity. When you come play the Giants, we have an elite pass rush. We have 2 pass rushers. You can't double them both. You know what I mean? You're going to have to deal with that. When you play Jalen Hurts twice a year, you know what I mean? When you now might play Jaden Daniels twice a year, guys who are mobile, who can move, you're going to need guys who can get in there and put pressure on it. So again, I like it because they're not really paying anyone else. They're paying Daniel Jones, but who else are they paying? And so it's not like all of a sudden now they're in cap hell because they signed him. So I'm comfortable with it because it helps at least give them some identity. And when they were great, when they won those Super Bowls with Eli, they had a pass rush, and then they had Eli Manning. So that's what the Giants are trying to get back to at this point in time. So again, it's a rich price, but it's really a $80 million guaranteed. Don't get blinded by the $150 million. That they like to say those big numbers. The Giants will not pay Brian Burns $150 million. He's not going to hit all those incentives and all the things it needs to be to do a $150 million deal. So
there will be restructures down the road.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. Exactly right. And they gave up. No, I mean, the Panthers are trash. The Panthers are the worst run organization in the NFL. You at least got to say, hey, it wasn't this iteration of the Panthers that didn't take 2 first-rounders for them. Correct. But
it was this owner that,
And so you hope then again they have a chance to build something, and whatever they're going to try to build, I don't know, but the Panthers are in hell right now.
It's brutal. It is brutal. Let's talk about Jacksonville and Tennessee, because they were both kind of, almost
linked.
linked in some ways. Gabe Davis signing a 3-year, $39 million deal to be in Jacksonville. And this was because Jacksonville, lost Calvin Ridley to the Tennessee Titans. Tennessee Titans signing Calvin Ridley to a 4-year, $92 million deal. Now we want to talk about overpays. This might take the cake for this offseason because we're talking about almost a relatively identical deal that they didn't want to invest in A.J. Brown just a couple years ago. And now they take a more inferior wide receiver by all metrics and pay him 4 years, 92. Now it's a different GM, different head coach.
Yeah, different regime.
But again, it's the same thing with the Panthers, same owner, same ownership group. And, I'm sure that they wish they could take that back. Calvin Ridley had some really dynamic games for Jacksonville last year and had some games where he completely disappeared. Gabe Davis is a similar player as well. So it's just kind of funny because for Jacksonville, it's good to we're replacing the loss of Ridley with a guy who has that big play potential. They're paying Davis a lot less. So I guess Jacksonville would win on that side of the deal,
works out. I love it for Jacksonville. I mean, it's a plug and play replacement and we don't have to overspend. And then if you're Tennessee, I'll at least say this, to overpay, I wouldn't do it, but at least you're giving your young quarterback a chance. You signed Tony Pollard.
They're giving him a weapon.
You bring in Calvin Ridley. So he now gets to go into this year and it creates clarity for the Titans to say, hey, early on, we need to keep addressing the offensive line. You got Skoronski last year. Let's add another offensive lineman. Let's keep working on this O-line. And now we have Tony Pollard. You have Hopkins. You have, Ridley on the outside. So you're going to at least say to Will Levis, you got some toys. You got some weapons. Now can their new head coach, actually take advantage of it? An offensive guy, the former OC for the Bengals. So there's a at least they have a direction. So I'll give them that.
For the Kansas City Chiefs on defense, we talked about them locking up Chris Jones to the 5-year, $158 million deal. At least I believe we did, or did we not talk about that?
Well, they needed to do it. Great deal.
Yeah. And honestly, I thought he was like 3 years older. I thought he was in his early 30s. So he's only 29 years old. So because at first I was like 5 years. But no, that makes perfect sense. 29 years old, 5-year deal, $158 million.
And it really is like a 3-year deal when you look at it.
Yeah. They got those voidable years on the back end. They tagged L'Jarius Sneed, smart move there, get him locked up. And then, what do we make of them getting Marquise Hollywood Brown? 1 year, $11 million, not terribly invested in him. You know, some of these 1-year rentals have worked out for them in the past. Juju Smith-Schuster, most recently. But I liked it. It was a low risk move, and you get a quality receiver in there to hopefully help find some stability in that receiver room. I do think though, Kansas City should either be looking to take a wide receiver very early in this draft because it's loaded with wide receiver, and or going after a Mike Williams or one of those other free agents out there
100%
right now to help supplement that.
100%. They still need to draft a wide receiver or bring in a Mike Williams. 100% agree. Hollywood Brown is the same type of player as the last couple guys they've tried to bring in, only he is the best of them. He is at least have had the highest peak of the last couple guys they've tried to bring in with the Kadarius Tonys and the guys who have just not worked out. So Rashid Rice remember we said he's really developed into a low-end wide receiver number 1, a really high-end wide receiver number 2 by the end of his rookie year. So you bring in a hopefully more reliable weapon, 1-year deal, nothing to write home about. And then if they brought in a Mike Williams, I'd love it. If they went and drafted a wide receiver in the first 2 rounds, I'd love it for them. They just need to keep the Chiefs need to nail draft picks because, again, they're spending a lot on the high-end star players. And I trust Kansas City with their ability to keep hitting on draft picks. So they shouldn't they shouldn't trade up or give up picks. They just need to nail the picks where they hit them.
Yep, definitely. Let's go back to Carolina real quick. They traded with the Pittsburgh Steelers for Deontay Johnson. They get Deontay Johnson, and a day 2 or a day 3 pick for the cornerback Dante Jackson, and a pick swap there as well. I actually liked this move for Carolina. It was good compensation. They got good value out of not having to pay too much to get Deontay Johnson, and they get one of the better route runners in the league. He's had his moments in Pittsburgh, no question about it. had his issues with some drops from time to time, but he's great at separating. And, this is a good move for a young quarterback in Bryce Young, who just needs to be able to, get wide receivers that can get open. And Deontay Johnson, that's his number one skill set, is getting open. So I think they get a little bit of a reliable guy here in terms of that. And get a little bit younger at the position, because we talked, Adam Thielen, and they've had some older guys in there. We talk about another team that really needs to lock in on wide receiver early in this draft. It's the Carolina Panthers as well, and kind of build that up for Bryce Young. They have a lot of needs, but I thought this was a good move overall.
No, offensive line and wide receiver is still an issue for Carolina, and they'll have to keep addressing it. But again, I like the move. It was a smart move to just know going into the draft, you've at least already addressed it. It still needs more addressing, but you don't have to just only draft wide receivers. This Deontay Johnson will work if he can control the other parts of Deontay Johnson, and maybe in this locker room, he'll mesh better.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things. I love some of the under the radar, trades and things like that, where they're not going after the big fish. They're not, trading for, Devontae Adams or something like that, and they're not picking up a giant free agent, but finding a really quality guy. Sometimes that's what you need to make financial sense, and also to be able to bring other guys into that room as well. The Seattle Seahawks traded for Sam Howell, so the Sam Howell experiment over early in Washington. What do we make of this for the Seahawks? I mean, obviously they just recently signed Geno Smith to a short-term extension. He's clearly it's not the guy that they're like, oh, you're the guy of our future. I liked it more for Seattle than I did for Washington, because I thought, now Washington's quarterback room is really thin, and obviously they're going to be taking a quarterback. I think that's that also has now, been put out there by Washington with this move, that there's no question it's going to be Drake May, Jane Daniels, or something like that. But Sam Howell, I guess getting a fresh opportunity to show what he can do in Seattle in this Rams. So it makes sense. If
probably
you're Seattle, a win for him.
If you're Seattle, you move out Drew Lock, you let him go, and you bring in Sam Howell. He's a young quarterback with still some solid upside, and I think if you're not sold on Geno Smith, you let them have an open competition. May the best man win, because at this point, Geno's deal, remember when they signed it last year, was really just like a 1-year deal. The main money is now gone. Mm-hmm. They paid him his money. So it's not like if he's on the bench, you have Geno Smith sitting there making $30 million and he's not playing. They're not paying Sam Howell anything. So it makes sense. And if you're Washington, again, it's a little bit of the Bears situation we talked about. You're going to draft a quarterback, get the other guy out of the room. You know what I mean? When you take a guy really, really high in the draft, we're talking about top 10, first, second, third overall quarterbacks, right? You want a crafty veteran in the room? That's fine. You know what I mean? Who's capable of starting? That's 100%. And Andy Dalton, Marcus Mariota, Jacoby Brissett, that's great. I think the underrated move for Washington was they signed Marcus Mariota. And that to me tells me that he's more similar to Jaden Daniels than he is Drake May. True. And who did the Patriots sign? They signed Jacoby Brissett, who's similar to Drake May than he is Jaden Daniels. So I think those are the little key things to say. I think this draft is shaping up to go Williams, Daniels, May, 1, 2, 3.
I could easily see that. That's a really good point, actually. I hadn't thought about it that way, but that does make a lot of sense. New Orleans.
Clip that one. You can clip that one.
Yeah, let's do it. Chase Young going to the Saints. Probably good landing spot for him. I mean, San Fran was a good landing spot for him too, but he's now going to play opposite Cam Jordan, Hall of Famer. Maybe learn from him. 1 year, $13 million. A lot of money invested for the Saints, but it's a 1-year deal and they can move off of it if it doesn't work out. And then also on defensively, which, might be a problem for the Saints because they do need some work offensively, and their big signings were this on the defensive side, and then also getting Willie Gay on a 1-year, $5 million deal. I like that one a lot better. It's good value, and Willie Gay, a really talented, linebacker.
Yeah.
So I liked that for New Orleans, but yeah, $13 million is a pretty penny. I'm not sure what the details of it are. There might have to be incentives hit for that one.
The thing about it is he's got Cam Jordan. So Cam Jordan will get him in line. Like Cam Jordan's the type of veteran and outspoken guy, just great personality that he will make sure the young kid who's very cocky and from all points, kind of a little bit of a locker room issue, plays ball. And if you're Chase Young, listen, your first chance of free agency is a 1-year, $13 million deal. You're starting to become Jadeveon Clowney really, really quickly, where this thing, you don't want to just start bouncing around the league on 1-year deals. So you need to show up and ball out. So I think it's a great move in that regard, to where still feels like a little bit of a prove it deal overall, and it makes the Saints better than they were. So I like it.
Absolutely. Yep. No, it's overall
the NFC South is going to be really competitive in this way. I think the NFC South is going to be very competitive this year. The top three, the Bucs, the Saints, and the Falcons now.
Yeah, that will be an interesting division to watch for sure, and we'll see what happens with the Carolina Panthers this year if they're able to double their win totals from 2023. Not that will be saying too much. All right, finally, the one I had on here, and if there were others that I missed, other big ones, feel free to tell me. But I'd like to discuss Keenan Allen to the Chicago Bears as well, because that was another thing that we talked about, helping set up Caleb Williams, for success, assuming that he is the pick. And I liked this move. You get a veteran wide receiver there. There's no better friend to a quarterback outside of his strong tackles than a veteran wide receiver that is a route runner that can help bring them along in an offense and help get that timing down. That's so important between a quarterback and receiver.
When the Bears decided that Mooney moved on, and I love the deal Mooney got in Atlanta, and I think he'll be very successful, and I think it was a smart deal for Atlanta too. When you decide you're not going to re-sign Mooney for that price, you absolutely needed to address wide receiver number 2 before the draft. And you address it by basically bringing in, a future Hall of Famer who's at the end of his career, but he's really a great compliment to DJ Moore. DJ Moore is a big play, explosive guy. Keenan Allen is 3rd and 5, slant, boom, pick up first down. Big, tall, strong. Keenan Allen is, red zone, boom, easy touchdown, big target, great hands. So he's a great compliment. I think they are, for this year, a top 3 duo in the NFL wide receiver. Now, the Bears could end up having the number 1 or number 2 wide receiver core in the NFL if they can get a Malik Neighbors or Rome Odunze to fall at 9. I don't think this eliminates the Bears from choosing a wide receiver at 9, but I do think it gives them the flexibility at 9 to take best player available if they feel like the wide receivers are gone. Because I still think if you look at the top of this draft, if there's no trades and no one moves up, you have very much so the possibility that the top 6 players are quarterback, wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver. Arizona, LA, and New York Giants, they all need wide receivers. So would it shock me if this draft goes Williams, Daniels, May, Harrison Jr., Neighbors, Odunze? Yeah. It wouldn't shock me. So, but because you got Keenan Allen at 9, you can trade out, you can take best player available, and you can still feel really, really good about it. Tyler Scott's your wide receiver 3. I like Tyler Scott a lot. I think he's a much better wide receiver 4 going into camp. So I still think the Bears could take a flyer on Mike Williams. Why not? You know what I mean? Like the Bears absolutely could be a place for that. You bring in Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, right? You know what I mean? And so I also think, though, they still need to address wide receiver in the draft. I'd like to see them in the first 3 rounds take a wide receiver that you think is capable of being the true next wide receiver number 2. I'm even okay if the Bears restructure Keenan Allen and make this a 2-year, 3-year deal and really kind of get him locked up in the sense of like, hey, end your career here, helping us develop our young quarterback, get his timetable lined up with DJ Moore. That way, if he tweaks a hamstring and he misses time, you still have guys behind him, but he's part of your organization for a longer time period.
Yeah, I think it's a good move for Chicago and help create that stability there. Over the last hour, Ian Rappaport reported that offensive tackle from the Patriots, Trent Brown, is going to sign with the Cincinnati Bengals. So that's a nice move for the Bengals to help, get some there and then push the depth a little bit on the tackle side, so that if an inevitable injury happens, which just seems to be the case with most offensive lines of the league, that you'll have some flexibility there. So I think that's a good move. And then not to bury the lead, we had just so much news during free agency, and that this occurred over the weekend, was, maybe less timely or less, great of a moment to put it in the spotlight. But Aaron Donald announcing his retirement
Yeah.
in the midst of all of this news has kind of, gone a little bit by the wayside. And I just wanted to take a few minutes to kind of talk about that and his career. He finishes it, Mark, exactly 10 years in the league. Same with the Barry Sanders mold, where it felt like, man, there were still some really good years left in his prime. They're the only two players as well to make the Pro Bowl each of their 10 years in the league, which is an incredible feat to begin with. He's a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, is going to be a clear first ballot Hall of Famer. There might be a lot of what ifs down the road, but at the same time, I mean, we talk about these guys at these positions wanting to have a life after football. And at that position too, you incur a lot of damage to the body. And, I can understand it if it was for, medical reasons and just being tired and stuff. That makes a lot of sense. But what a run it was. And, it's one of those careers where it feels like he's been in the league for longer than 10 years. I feel like we've been talking about Aaron Donald for the last 20. It's just he made that big of an impact on the league. And, I know Kyler Murray and a lot of other quarterbacks in the NFC West are tweeting, thank goodness, because that's one less person they have to contend with. But yeah, kudos to him on a great career.
Huge hole for the Rams to fill now. And I will say this, it's going to be a hell of a first ballot class in 5 years with him and Kelsey and maybe Fletcher Cox in a similar vein of Urlacher and Ray Lewis both going in, both deserving. It sucks for Fletcher Cox a little bit because he'll get overshadowed a little bit like Urlacher in that regard.
Yeah,
but
he might miss out on that first ballot. Yeah.
But I will say this, we're going to do this later on in the offseason when there's less news. His retirement inspired me to think about who are the top 10 players from 2000 on in this century, because he is absolutely, to me, his career is very, very, very comparable to Barry Sanders and Megatron, to where you say to yourself, he's not the greatest D tackle of all time. It's still probably, the Reggie Whites of the world, but similar to Barry Sanders, like in a nutshell, in 10 years in their prime of primes, similar to Megatron, shorter careers, but at their peaks of peaks, I don't think there was anyone better at the peaks of the peaks. And Aaron Donald to Reggie White, Barry Sanders to Walter Payton, Megatron to Jerry Rice. Those are clear, number 2 guys, right? And it was a little bit shorter careers, but nonetheless, you can make the argument at their peak of peak, number 1 maybe at their position of all time.
Yeah, absolutely. And the magnitude at which they left their imprint on the league, they had an influence on the game and influenced how teams approach them. There was Aaron Donald has faced a lot of triple teams in his time in the NFL, and he was with the Rams during a complete transformation of their franchise with the move, getting new head coaches, franchise quarterbacks, Super Bowl loss, Super Bowl win. It's just, there's been a lot that's gone into it. And it's cool that he was at a cornerstone. Not too many D tackles are the face of their teams, especially a West Coast LA team. Aaron Donald is one of those that
you can leave on top too, and he leaves a little in the tank, just like Kelsey, just a little left in the tank. That's fine.
Yep.
Walk out, know that you're a first
on your own
ballot.
terms.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep, totally. So kudos to him on a great career, and we'll talk more, I'm sure, in the coming years of his Hall of Fame credentials and when he becomes a Hall of Fame candidate and a finalist in 5 years, which is sure to happen. We'll be talking more about that then too, because this show is going nowhere, and we're not going anywhere in the short term either. We got another episode coming your way.
Yeah. By that time, Caleb Williams will be a Pittsburgh Steeler. And so.
Right, exactly.
Mitch and Justin before him.
Beautiful. Yeah. Hopefully the Justin Fields one works out a little bit better than the Mitch Trubisky experiment.
I think it will.
But,
I think it will.
Yeah. The interesting thing is that, Mitch came here because he was a great locker room guy, and and a really solid backup, but his biggest issues, which were turnovers, is what ended up getting him out of here. I'm hoping that's not the same for Justin Fields, because he has put the ball on the ground a lot in the last couple of years too. So maybe Mike Tomlin and company can iron that out of him and get a franchise guy.
I'm rooting for him. I'm rooting for him.
Absolutely. Super stoked to see him in the black and gold. They do not give out number 1 jerseys. I'm interested to see if they make an exception or if Justin Fields is going to have to don a different number. So we'll see. I'm guessing he pivots to number 2 if that's the case, or maybe 11. I don't know. We'll see. But time will tell on that front. And that will do it for our free agency frenzy full recap here on the Football Lounge with Mark and Dan. We are part of the For Frequency Sake podcast network. You can check us out at forfantasysakeqc.com. All of the other shows on there, and obviously hit us up on social media too. You can check out our show on YouTube here if you're watching. Thank you for the support. If you could like and subscribe, greatly helps us out. We appreciate that. And yeah, there will be more news to come during this free agency period. Some trades. We got pro days, and we are launching ourselves into draft season very shortly. Going to have some draft previews, some mock drafts, all of that coming up over the next month. But until then, we are signing out. I'm Dan. He's Mark. We'll see you next time.